We are Brooke and Gary, and this is our floating home, One Life.
2 years ago, we traded the American dream for our dream. We bought a sailboat, quit our jobs, and sold everything.
And without knowing how to sail, we somehow managed to make it over 5,000 nautical miles from where we started. 13 countries later, we are still on this crazy journey.
One of the questions we get asked most often is, how do we afford this lifestyle? So we decided to put together this video to show you all of the financial aspects.
All right, so we broke it up into a couple categories. First, we're gonna tell you a little bit about ourselves and our boat. Then we're gonna tell you about our initial costs before we left the dock, how much we spent during our 2 years of cruising, and lastly, how we afford this lifestyle.
Traveling by sailboat can be very expensive or very cheap. We've met people out here on a boat that they paid $2,000 for, and we've met people that paid $2 million for a boat. So you really can do this on any budget.
It's just the two of us on board, no children or pets, so I feel like we can live for a lot less than most people. The majority of our time is spent on anchor rather than in a marina. We do 98% of the boat work ourselves, and we cook 95% of our meals on One Life.
Okay, now for a little bit about our home. One Life is a 1984 nautical development offshore 40. She is a fiberglass, cutter-rigged monohull, and she's actually older than we are. Although she's 37 years old, she was very well maintained by the previous owners, and she didn't really need too much work to get ready to go sailing.
Okay, so first let's talk about our initial expenses. All of our costs are in US dollars.
We purchased One Life in Florida for $80,000 US, but we also had to pay some additional fees. We paid $4,850 in tax, $320 to haul her out for inspection, and we paid $250 for a rigging survey. I actually completed the boat survey myself, as I have experience in the marine industry.
Additionally, we spent $404 on registration and documentation fees. This included our Coast Guard registration and our registration for our radio.
If you want to learn more about One Life and her particular setup and systems, we'll put a link to our boat tour video below. Luckily, One Life was pretty much ready to go cruising when we bought her. She already had a generator, a water maker, and new electronics, so we didn't have too much work to do before leaving. But we still put $5,717 into her before we left the dock. We bought a new 65-pound Mantis anchor, a new 20-horsepower Suzuki outboard for our dinghy, safety gear such as spin-lock deck vests, and tethers to clip into our jacklines. We also purchased new emergency radio beacons and a dive compressor, which has been awesome.
Also included in this amount are sheets, towels, and organizers. Pretty much anything we needed to make One Life our home. Before we left the dock, we also wanted to stock up on food and booze, so we spent $1,820 in provisions.
One final expense before leaving was our marina slip fees for the 7 months that we lived at the dock before setting off to go sailing. This cost us $4,200. So our total cost for everything before leaving the dock comes out to $97,928.
This brings us to our costs while cruising. One very critical factor in determining how much this will cost depends on where you go.
Some months we only spend a couple $100, and other months we spend thousands. We took our total costs over 2 years, and we'll present our monthly average.
Okay, so let's take a look at where we cruised. We began our journey in January 2020 from Florida when we sailed to the Bahamas, where we spent 3 months until COVID happened and we were locked down. From here, we decided to make the 10-day sail to the US Virgin Islands, where we spent 3 months before heading to Grenada for hurricane season. After hauling our boat out, we decided to sail back up the Eastern Caribbean, first stopping at St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Antigua, and then Barbuda, where we spent our New Year's and wrapped up 2020.
In 2021, we left Barbuda, went back to Antigua, and then we sailed to the tiny Dutch island of St. Eustatius, where we spent 9 weeks. From there, we made a quick stop at Ceiba before sailing all the way to Puerto Rico, where we put the boat in a marina to fly home and sell our house back in Florida. We got back to the boat, and then we sailed south to Curacao in the ABCs. We spent a couple months there before sailing west to Colombia, spent a couple months there, and then moved further west to Panama, where we are now.
During this entire time, we tracked every penny we spent, whether it was an avocado on the side of the road for 50 cents or our batteries that we replaced in Grenada. Okay, so how much did we spend our money on and where did it go?
Well, it should come as no surprise that our most expensive category is boat maintenance and repairs. We spend $559 per month taking care of one life. This category can vary wildly based on the age of the boat and the type of sailing that you do. We find that on our long offshore passages, we break a lot of stuff, and the more miles we sail, the more we break. We've had some pretty major expenses in this category over the last 2 years. For example, we bent our strut and shaft in US Virgin Islands and had to haul out in Grenada. When we were hauled out, we completed the new bottom job with new anti-fouling paint, and the paint alone cost us nearly $1,000. While we were there, we also took the opportunity to replace our house battery bank. The batteries cost $2,400, and we hope that those will last us about 5 to 8 years, so it's not an expense that we should see again anytime soon. One other major expense that was more of an upgrade was we bought 2 new solar panels when we were in US Virgin Islands. We replaced those and put in a new charge controller at a cost of around $1,000. Likewise, we replaced our chain towards the end of 2021 at a cost of $1,200. This should last us hopefully 8 to 10 years, so it's another expense that's a one-time deal and should last a long while. The list of other minor repairs is extensive, and it includes fixing our autopilot twice, our refrigeration system, our VHF radio, our main sheet traveler, and a whole host of other plumbing and electrical issues. There's always something to fix on One Life. We do 99% of the work ourselves on board, and that saves us a ton of money. Without that, I'm not sure we'd be able to afford this lifestyle. Okay, our next category is fuel, which includes diesel, gasoline, and propane. For diesel, our main engine is a Yanmar 56 horsepower, and our generator is a diesel Northern Lights 5 kilowatt. So between those two, we use about 15 gallons of diesel every month. We ran our engine for an average of 200 hours per year over the last 2 years, and our generator for an average of 300 hours per year over the last 2 years. For gasoline, this powers our dinghy motor as well as our dive compressor engine. Those are both pretty small, so we only use about 5 gallons of gasoline on average every month. And then this category also includes propane, which we go through about 1 6-pound bottle every month. The cost of that bottle can vary greatly. We paid as little as $3 per bottle in Puerto Rico and as much as $25 a bottle here in Panama. The total cost for all of our fuel is $76 per month.
Our next category is marina and mooring fees. And we spend on average $162 a month. And the main reason that is such a cheap number is because we would much rather prefer to stay on anchor, which is why we invested in the Mantis anchor before leaving. There are a few times, however, when we were forced to take a mooring ball, such as when we were in the national parks in St. John in the USVI, or when we had to check in St. Vincent. That was part of their COVID protocol. Also, when we bent our strut in the USVI, we had to haul out in Grenada, so that was a pretty hefty marina fee for us. And in 2021, we spent 2 months in a marina in Puerto Rico so we could fly home to sell our house. More on that later. And we also spent 7 weeks in the marina in Colombia so we could leave One Life safely and travel inland. With all of that said, we really do spend 98% of our time out here on anchor. Let's talk about the controversial subject of insurance, where we spent $55 on average per month. When we left Florida, we canceled our insurance because insurance really restricts the places you can go and what is covered. For example, during hurricane season, you have to get someplace like Grenada or Curacao to be out of the hurricane belt in order for your insurance to cover you. Another thing is because One Life is so old and we don't know how to sail, well, we didn't when we left, it was very expensive. But when we had to haul out in Grenada Marine, we needed liability-only insurance, which allowed us to also bring the boat into the marina in Puerto Rico. After a year, our insurance expired, and we did end up in another marina in Colombia, but lucky for us, they did not require insurance. So for now, we are currently uninsured until we have to obtain a policy when we go into our next marina, which hopefully won't be for a while.
Okay, let's talk about clearance and custom fees. We average $75 a month. We have to pay this every time we enter a new country. These costs can vary widely based on where you are in the world and each specific country. For example, in the Bahamas, we paid $300 for 3 months, and that also included our fishing permit. However, in a place like the US Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, for us, it was free. We paid nothing to enter the country. There are places that are a lot more expensive. For example, Colombia, where we paid about $350 to enter the country, and then every time we moved the boat to a new port, we needed to pay an agent, which came out to around another $150 US. One thing that we weren't expecting was to have to pay for COVID tests upon arrival in new countries. These tests got pretty expensive in some places, so we've included those in this category.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about our second highest expense out here, which is provisioning, and we average spending about $512 a month. You're probably thinking that that does not sound like much money, and you're right. Let's talk first about what provisions include. So, of course, our food items, our booze, and any daily items that we use. So, what we have learned is that if we eat and drink like the locals do, we can afford to live out here pretty cheaply. But it also depends where we are. So when we were in the Bahamas, a case of strawberries would cost us about $8. But in Colombia, veggies, wine, rum, it was all pretty cheap, so we loaded up there. Another thing that we do is we try to buy in bulk as much as we can, because what we've learned is the more trips we make to a store, the more money we spend. We always buy more than what's on our list anytime we go to the grocery store. We also do a lot of price comparison shopping, so sometimes we'll go to 4 or 5 stores in a day just to get the best prices. Another thing that really helps the amount we spend out here is when we're at the store, instead of buying the imported Quaker Oats brand of oatmeal, we find the local brand. And most of the time, it's just as good, if not better, than what we're used to back in the States. And one very huge reason we're able to spend so little on groceries is because Gary is quite the spearfisherman, and we've also been known to catch a few mahi. Luckily, we have a freezer, so we're able to vacuum seal all of our catches and stick them in there, so we have fish pretty much all the time on hand out here. As for beverages, we drink mostly water on One Life, but we do love our sundowners. But what we've learned is the drinks we're used to, like nice bottle of red wine or Gary's favorite bourbon, is quite expensive out here. So instead, we opt for the cheap version of box wine, the cheapest beer we can find, and an $8 bottle of rum. Overall, we don't go without when it comes to food and beverage. And despite what people might think, we still have the bag of beans that we left with from Florida. Yeah, we eat and drink pretty well out here.
Speaking of food, let's talk about our next category, which is dining out. In this category, we spend $76 per month. And if that sounds low, well, yeah, it is. Back when we were living on land, we easily could have spent that in just one dinner for the two of us. But now, we're a little bit more reserved when it comes to going out to eat. In a lot of places, like the remote islands of the Bahamas, there simply are no restaurants to go to. And when we're out sailing, there's no one to cook for us. So we eat about 95% of our meals right here on One Life, which saves us a lot of money. When we do decide to go out to eat, we tend to look for a place that the locals go to, as that tends to be the cheapest food and also the most authentic. The thing is, we'd rather spend our money on experiences than going out to eat. But we try to balance that with our desire to try out all of the local cuisines.
Okay, this is a fun one. Bar and drinks, where we spend about $53 a month. We like to go out as much as anyone, but as it turns out, there's not bars everywhere we go. So we cut down on this expense by drinking on the boat, drinking on our friends' boats, and doing a lot of beach bonfires. We also don't go to the fancy new beach bars or resort bars. We tend to go to the local rum shacks where we can buy a bottle of rum for $8, share it with all our friends, and maybe take a shot for $1. Because rum is cheaper than Coca-Cola in most places that we've been. We've also met the best people at some of these bars and have had a ton of fun. Okay, and since we're talking about bar and drinks, let's talk about our fourth largest category, entertainment. And this one surprised me a little bit just because, I don't know, I guess we have more fun out here than I thought we would, but we spend on average $89 a month. Typically, most of the things we do out here are free. The hikes, the waterfalls, we were able to visit a honeybee farm, cost us nothing. But occasionally there's something that we want to do that costs a bit of money. We spent 9 weeks in Statia scuba diving and spent close to $1,000. We definitely weren't expecting that, but it was worth every penny. We also spent a bit of cash hiking the pitons in St. Lucia, going to a few soccer games, and tipping local guides. All 100% worth it. People out here seem to be very welcoming and want to share their island and home with you. So fortunately for us, the majority of our experiences out here have been free.
So this is our dinghy, and it's our main mode of transportation to get to and from land. But once we're on land, sometimes we need to take a bus, a taxi, or even an airplane to get where we want to go. We spend an average of $57 per month on transportation. In some islands, we've rented a car, such as Nassau and St. Lucia, to get around. And we usually try to share that cost with other sailors to save some money. When we were in Colombia, we actually took a couple flights to get to some other cities that we wanted to see, such as Barranquilla and Medellin. When we were in Grenada, hauled out for a month, we needed a way to get to and from our apartment to the boatyard. So we rented a scooter, which was great for getting around the island, getting groceries, and running to the hardware store. We try to walk as much as we can and like to get our exercise that way, but sometimes taking public transportation is just a nice way to get around.
One of the expenses we weren't really expecting before we left on this trip was housing, because we always thought we would stay here on One Life. But we ended up spending about $49 on this category. And here's why. When we were in Grenada, there was a COVID protocol in place that we weren't able to stay on our boat when it was hauled out in the yard. Also, when we were in Colombia, we decided to do some inland travel, bouncing around at hostels and Airbnbs along the way. We even stayed at a treehouse, which was pretty cool. We keep this cost low by staying at hostels and not staying with resorts, and we try to stay with friends as much as we can as well.
Our next category is communication, which we spend an average of $75 a month on. This includes buying SIM cards at every country that we go to get a prepaid phone plan. This category also includes replacing our cell phones, which we've had to do twice after losing 2 into the water. We buy the cheapest smartphones we can, knowing that it's probably going to happen again. The cost of data plans can vary a lot between countries. We've paid as much as $5 a gigabyte in some places in the Eastern Caribbean, and as little as $20 a month for an unlimited data plan in Colombia and Panama. When plans are expensive, we try to use and find free Wi-Fi as much as we can. We might go to a coffee shop or a bar, buy a drink, and use the Wi-Fi for a few hours. That's actually how we upload a lot of our YouTube videos. We've even shamelessly pretended to be guests at a resort in order to use the Wi-Fi.
One other super small category that we have is clothing, and we spend about $24 a month because, for one, all of our clothes must fit in these 2 compartments, so we don't have a lot of room, and also we don't need to buy anything new out here. Really, all we need is a couple bathing suits and maybe a new pair of shoes occasionally when Gary wears out his sandals. All right, so next we're going to talk about laundry and trash, which on average we spend about $10 a month on this category. The main reason we were able to save money is because I do all of our laundry in a bucket. It's only occasionally that we are close enough to a laundromat that I'm able to load it all up in the dinghy and take it there. Otherwise, it all gets done here aboard One Life for free. As far as our trash goes, occasionally we have to pay $2 or $3 to dispose of a bag of trash, which is fine. We're completely happy to pay that, knowing that our trash is being disposed of properly.
The next category is medical care, which we spend only $16 per month on average. We have a pretty well-stocked med kit here on One Life, and in a lot of places, our only option is to treat ourselves. We left the United States without a health insurance plan because most plans won't cover you if you get sick or injured outside of the United States. We've actually found that healthcare costs are very reasonable in other countries. We had one incident in Carriacou where Brooke had an ear infection and needed to see a doctor and get a prescription. All of that cost us, without insurance, less than $80 US. We've been pretty fortunate so far to not have any major medical expenses, and we hope that continues. Our final category is gifts, and we spend only $18 per month on souvenirs and gifts. Sometimes we come across a handmade item that we just have to have, and sometimes we want to buy something to send back to friends or family.
Now that we have talked about all of our expenses individually, let's look at the total cost. For our first year of cruising, we spent $23,552 for the entire year. In our second year, we spent $22,222, which averages $1,907 a month. We were actually quite surprised how close our expenses were for both years.
Before we left, based on our research, we thought that we would be able to do this spending around $2,000 a month, or $24,000 a year. And it's really helped to track all of our expenses. So we know where our money's going, and we know where maybe we can cut back a little.
We did have a few additional expenses in 2021 that we didn't include in the figures we gave you. These expenses were related to our travel costs back to the US to sell our house. We spent $2,330 for this, which includes all expenses related to flying back to the US to sell our house and visit our friends and family, including airfare, food, and accommodations.
We also started this YouTube channel in 2021, which cost us $379 for website hosting, subscription fees for Epidemic Sound and our editing software, and we purchased some new equipment to be able to produce these videos, which included a new laptop, a new GoPro, camera lenses, and a replacement drone, which totaled $2,236. The big question is, how do we afford this lifestyle?
And the number one reason is because we have saved and saved as much as possible over the past several years.
When we left Florida, we actually maintained our home there and we rented it on Airbnb. That brought us a little bit of income, and we did that for the first 18 months that we were out sailing.
But since then, we've decided to sell our home because, well, the market was really good.
And it became very difficult to manage a rental from 1,500 miles away. So now we're living off of our savings, and we've always said that
we will keep doing this until we run out of money or it's no longer fun. But with that said, we hope you enjoyed this video. We hope it was a little bit informative about how much it costs to cruise.
And if you have any questions, drop them below and we'll reply.
Yep. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Hey crew, thanks for watching.
A special thank you to our patrons who believe in us and help make these videos possible.
If you're interested in finding out how to support these productions, head over to our Patreon link in the description below.
Cheers, everyone.